All right, ladies and gentlemen, in 1980, the WHO, the World Health Organization, officially declared that the smallpox was eradicated. It is the first human virus in the history of the world to ever have been eradicated solely through the use of vaccines. Now, the first vaccine for smallpox appeared in the at the end of the 1700s. The first time it was used in the United States of America was 1809. Now, the FDA wouldn't come into existence until 1906. So for 100 years, America used a vaccine, or the world used a vaccine that the FDA, which didn't exist yet, hadn't approved. In 1954, Jonas Salk came up with the polio vaccine. And in 1955, they started administering that vaccine to children. Now, it's interesting, dovetailing back into the smallpox vaccine. It took 184 years to eradicate, and for the first and only time in human history, it was eradicated. A human virus was eradicated through the use of vaccine. It took 184 years. As a matter of fact, they stopped giving that vaccine in 1971 or 72. It took 184 years to eradicate that virus that killed over 300 million people, and it existed for over 300 years. It was the scourge of the world. 300 million people, and now it does not exist solely through the use of vaccines. In 1954, Jonas Salk comes up with the polio vaccine, and it was very controversial. Very controversial. Matter of fact, Elvis Presley and the like had to get on and to try to convince people that it was necessary. By the time we got to 1979, polio in the United States of America stopped. We didn't have any more incidences of polio in America after 1979. It hasn't. As a matter of fact, polio only exists in two countries right now. One is Afghanistan, one is Pakistan. And this year, they're going to send teams out to try to be the second virus that is eradicated. Now, they all met, like the polio virus in particular, was met with the same reticence, the same upheaval, the same outcry, the same people worrying about what happened. But yet that vaccine that I took when I was a baby, my grandchild just took a variation. It kills the IPV virus, and it is so effective that they still use it today, and it is used in combination with other viruses. You can't be a baby right now in America getting shots without having a component of that vaccine. It does not exist. Matter of fact, right now you don't see measles or rubella or mumps. The only time you see them is when people stop taking the vaccine because of whatever in the asinine thing they done heard on Facebook or Instagram or social media. They stop taking it, and then the measles spring up. We have an outbreak. They quarantine the area and find out where it came from. We have always been protected by vaccines. At the same time, around the same time, they were giving polio vaccines. Yes, they were doing the Tuskegee experiment. Those dualities exist and always have in America. I cannot explain that to you. I can tell you this. The people who are telling you that these vaccines don't work and it's bad and you don't know are protected by those vaccines. Right now, that we don't have a world full of polio and we don't have a world full of smallpox because those vaccines were effective and they work, and took decades, sometimes centuries to start working. Right now, the very people telling you how detrimental those things are protected by the very vaccines. Matter of fact, when some of these rednecks want to go over and hunt big game in Africa, guess what they got to take? A bunch of vaccines. If we had the same kind of fonts of misinformation, the same kinds of doubts, the same kind of, whether it's the Fox News or Tucker Carlson or your cousin being able to get on the internet and quote some inane, bullshit study that gets people killed. Imagine a world where we have the same reticence and the same things we do. We'd have a world full of crippled people full of smallpox. I am not telling you that not to do your research. I'm not telling you not to know. But when people say dumbass things like the FDA hasn't approved it, it has for emergency use. And you know why? Because we had an emergency. An emergency right now where people were dying right now. Over 4 million and counting are dead as we speak. The FDA didn't even approve the smallpox vaccine. It didn't exist in 1906. They started using it in 1809. And it is the first virus ever to be eradicated in human history by a vaccine. You don't have to take this vaccine. You don't have to do anything. But I think that it's wrong, one, to spread misinformation, and two, to go out amongst people knowing you're unvaccinated. If you want to do what you want to do, stay home. Stop telling me it's your right. It's your right to smoke. You can't do it in public because it harms other people. You can text, but you can't text and drive because it harms other people. You don't get to do nothing. You don't get to say, I'm not going to take the vaccine and I'm going to go out amongst people and potentially damage them. You don't get to do that. That is irresponsible, inhumane, selfish, and cruel. And you quote these particles of facts and put them in and cause further confusion. If you don't want to do anything, the same people telling you, well, don't take the vaccine, are the same people telling you not to wear masks, telling you have to social distance, telling the government they didn't have to shut things down. 2 vaccines, both very controversial. Right now, one eradicated the world from polio, from smallpox that had killed 300 million people and does not exist anymore. And 2, the polio vaccine, also very controversial, which is on the verge of eliminating the second human virus. If we had the world of people that we have right now spreading misinformation and lies and half-truths, we would all be crippled. Katherine Jackson right now walks with a limp because of polio. Scores of people, millions of people died because hundreds of million people died because of smallpox, and they don't exist anymore. Imagine a world where all these Fox News people, all these Tucker Carlson, and your dumbass cousin with his herb book were having a voice. We would all be a world full of smallpox, infected, polio, crippled people. You don't have to do anything, but you don't get to keep spreading misinformation and a virus because you don't want to do something. That's a little note from the GED section. We've got a Jazz Report coming up in 15 minutes. This, of course, is the D.L. Hughley Show.